Today, I want to talk to y'all about discernment and just this idea of how the heck do we know what to do with our lives and what God wants us to do with our lives? Because that's a really scary question.
Shine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh.
Video. I wanted to tell y'all kind of a very just like personal story about how I have gone through the process of discerning and how I have tried to figure out what God is calling me to do, especially specifically with my summer. So this summer, I still don't know what the heck I'm going to do with my life. But I have been flip-flopping a lot because I've been trying to discern and trying to figure out like, okay, God, like, what do you want from this? But it's just not been working. So to start out with, I got offered a job like way back in August to be on leadership at this camp this summer that I worked at last summer. Super awesome place. Like I would absolutely love to work there and I would thrive working there. But whenever I started to go and pray about the job, it didn't really feel like it was what God wanted me to do. I just felt kind of complacent. I felt kind of not really pulled in that direction. And I knew that if it's what God wanted me to do, I would feel very excited about this job. So here I'm just like being aware of like what God wants me to do. And I like knew like, no, God, I don't think this is what you're calling me to do. So yeah, I was confident in that decision. And then come March, I started thinking about it again. And I was like, okay, well, like, I still don't have anything to do with my summer, God. So, like, what am I going to do? Sit around all summer? No, thank you. I could not sit around all summer. So I was like, maybe, like, camp. But then I was like, no, like, I'm trusting what God wants me to do. And then one of my friends reached out, and they were like, have you thought about working at camp? And I'm like, I actually kind of might want to do that. It could be fun. And so I started thinking about it more, and this was, like, early March. But I was like, no, not really. So I went ahead and applied for some lifeguard job here in College Station, and I was like, okay, sure. I interviewed, I already had the certification. They were like, yeah, you sound great. Everything was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It just kind of happened. But because it's for the city, I had to go get drug tested because, you know, they want to make sure I'm not doping, right? And the funny thing is that I failed my drug test. I promise I don't do drugs. But that's the last thing that I expected to do. In the end, like a week later, the test ended up, they were like, yeah, it's false positive. But like, the shock at the moment, they were like, it's coming up positive for marijuana. I was like, excuse me? What? That doesn't make any sense. So after that, I was like, okay, divine providence. This is a sign. God wants me to work at camp. The very next morning, my boss called, like he messaged me and he was like, hey, we still have leadership positions open if you're interested. And I was like, okay, yes, this is something I would love to do. I feel kind of like there was a lot of fear attached to it, but I was like, I'm just scared because it's something big and it'd be giving up my whole summer for God, and I'm just not really sure about it. But I was like, yes, I'll do it. So I kept praying about it, and I kept just feeling the same feeling of complacency, of not really feeling like totally excited and lit up and on fire. And this is something like I would love to do, so that doesn't make any sense. But I said yes. I was like, yeah, I'll come work at camp. I met with my partner, you know, we're like rocking and rolling. But the past couple weeks, I have just felt a lot of anxiety. And it's kind of pointless anxiety. Like it's the end of school, but like I don't really have any huge projects due. I'm not super busy. It doesn't make any sense. And I've been I've been riddling my brain, trying to like figure out where is this coming from, God? Like, what are you doing here? Like there's something wrong in my life because nothing feels right. And I was just so anxious and so worried and just like, yes. And just like deep breaths. And so I was talking to one of my friends a couple nights ago and they were like, hey, you've been bringing up camp a lot and like not in a good way. And maybe this is something that like your anxiety is coming from. And they asked me to think about what it would be like if I didn't work at camp. And I like thought about it. And like, I didn't even realize it, but they were like, you just lit up. You just like a huge thing just lifted. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize like that all this anxiety was coming from the decision to go work at camp because I went against what I thought God was calling me to do. And so all of these like feelings, and it's just like, I feel like this and I feel like that, and just like not really knowing where to go and what to do is so confusing. It was so confusing. And I ended up having to call camp back and tell them that I can't work there, which was really hard because I felt so flaky, so flip-floppy, just like kind of the worst for bailing. But I have to realize that I'm human, I'm imperfect, I'm not going to make the right decisions all the time. I can only strive for God and strive for what is good and strive to be better. And so that's what I'm doing here. So yeah, decided that camp is not for me through a lot of flip-floppy and discernment, and it's the process of discernment, which kind of sucks because I really just want it to be black and white. I want God to just send me a clear sign and say, this is what you're gonna do, you know, just send me a letter in the mail. That'd be great, you know, I'll read it, I'll do it, sure. But the thing is that God wants your freedom and he wants you to be able to make the decision. So he's always going to advocate for what's best for you. And sometimes that's for you to learn how to make a decision, which is for me right now. So kind of big takeaways. One, yeah, trust your gut would be the biggest thing. I knew in the beginning that I wasn't supposed to go work at camp, so I should have just trusted it. It didn't need any more anxiety than that. I could have just left it at that, been like, okay, God, sure. But I didn't trust my gut. Two, don't look for huge signs. I love signs, and I think that God is just going to be like, whoa, here's an elephant walking through the street. Go work at camp. With like a giant sign that says go work at camp, but that's not how it works, unfortunately. So trust your gut, and yeah, don't look for huge signs. And the third final takeaway would be that it's a process, so be forgiving of yourself. Know that you're human, you're imperfect, we're going to fail, and the best thing that we can do is get back up again and keep trying and keep going.
My pocket got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh.